the fragmented world is a reality. If we look at our domestic situation, we have enough divisions on caste, on creed, on language, different states speaking different viewpoints on the economy. Religion also becomes an issue in the country in one form or the other. And in these various divided silos that the country works in, we as a nation have to chart out our pathway to progress, our future, and work towards a developed nation, a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Coupled with these domestic issues, the world today is in a complete disarray, even on simple and basic issues of sustainability, for example, or climate change, whether it truly is a challenge or not, whether nations accept it as their responsibility or not. The world is facing two major conflicts, both in Ukraine, Russia, and the Gaza-Palestine conflict. Different blocs around the world don't talk to each other or have problems with each other. We have the democratic world and an autocratic world. We have market economies. We have non-market economies. The challenge towards sustainability and inclusive growth is leading to a stark inequality, because the Sustainable Development Goals seem so far away. I still remember when the Sustainable Development Goals were first articulated, I used to wonder, why are we keeping a time frame as late as 2030? These are pressing challenges before the world, and there should be a collective effort to achieve these goals much faster. I never imagined that we will be in 2025 and most parts of the world don't even talk about the Sustainable Development Goals anymore. We in our own country, in a very small way, our government has been very focused in achieving each of these SDGs. But at a macro level, I still don't think the world is really bothered about countries in Africa, less developed countries, the Pacific Island countries, the Pacific region, the Caribbean countries. We still have a long way to go before we can look at the shared prosperity of all of mankind. But despite all of these disturbances, domestic or international, India still continues to be somewhat an oasis in the desert. We continue to be the world's fastest growing economy. We continue to have stability, political continuity. We are a country where, despite all the differences, more than 500 million people land up at the Kumbh, at the Mahakumbh, in such a short span of time, peacefully, enthusiastically, with devotion. And for all the difficulties and challenges to reach there and get back, you don't find a murmur of unhappiness, you don't find anybody there who's complaining. As we labor on, the country in its Amrit Kal has made a collective commitment. 140 crore Indians have today made a collective commitment to ourselves that we are going to make India a developed nation by 2047 when we celebrate 100 years of independence. In a way, it's something like 75 years ago when the Republic of India gave unto itself. We, the people of India, gave to ourselves our sovereign republic. In some sense, in 2022, we gave to ourselves a collective commitment that in the 25 years, the Amrit Kal, we wish to see a developed nation, a nation where every child is cared for, a nation that will be at the cutting edge of technologies, will be at the forefront of innovation, will be a part of the global effort to meet the challenges of the world, be it sustainability, be it inclusive growth, be it making sure that every person gets their rightful due when it comes to the basic needs of life. And I think collectively, the progress that we have made, whether it's the last 20, 30 years, whether it's the last 10 years, whether it's the last 3 years since 2022, we have a lot to celebrate. We have taken rapid strides in our engagement with innovation, be it artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning, the Internet of Things, data analytics. I think by and large, we are all well poised to start engaging with what is today become an imperative. We are producing the world's largest number of STEM graduates, and a large number of them come from your city of Pune and from the area that you just described. And by the way, 43%, Kiranji will be happy to know that 43% of these STEM graduates today from India are women. And it's these women of substance who are leading the charge, what Prime Minister Modi calls women-led development in the country. And frankly, we can never aspire to become a developed nation unless we make sure that our sisters, our daughters contribute equally to the economy, and their contribution, at many times unrecognized contribution, also comes into the formal numbers. And we can see the rapid change in the last 10 years since Prime Minister Modi launched the Beti Bachao, Beti Badhao, Save the Child, Teach the Child program. We've seen a massive increase in their enrollment. I still remember my son doing a project in the municipal schools of Mumbai. Dr. Mashalkar, that was I think 2010 or 11, just before he went to undergraduate studies. And he went around all the municipal schools of Mumbai, and we have about 1100 or 1200 of them. And the two factors because of which there was a rapid decline in the girl child going into class 6th, 7th, 8th were toilets and sanitary napkins. And these are two areas amongst many that the Modi government has focused its attention on. I remember in 2014, when from the ramparts of the Red Fort, Prime Minister Modi announced the Swachh Bharat mission, the Clean India mission, there was a furor amongst the opposition parties that what is this Prime Minister doing? Who speaks about cleanliness or Swachhata on an important address, almost like the State of the Union address on 15th of August? Everybody expected him to talk about all the big things. But Prime Minister Modi is very clear, unless you address the small things, you'll never be able to get the big outcomes that we as a nation desire. And I think there will be nobody in this room who could disagree on the importance of cleanliness, be it in our own surroundings, be it on the streets, the nation as a whole, the impact that clean water has in our lives, the impact on our health, the impact on the nation's well-being. And very often when I'm asked that our daughters and sisters had to go through this ordeal every single day, and I often wonder, 67 years after independence, governments had come and gone, leaders had come and gone, how come nobody ever thought of this basic need that the country deserved? And I remember along with that, in 2014, we decided to make a girls' toilet separately in every school across the country. And we pooled private sector and government resources. We pooled the CSR of several companies, and across the nation, nearly, if I remember correctly, a few 100,000 toilets were made through the length and breadth of the country, so that every educational school has a separate girls' toilet. Another program we took up was to take sanitary napkins, cost down to 1 rupee, so that nobody is ever deprived of a basic amenity like a sanitary pad when the girl child needs it. And I think these may sound very small, may even sound a little silly for the Asia Economic Dialogue, but I can't tell you what a massive impact this has had on the nation's economy. Just these two small initiatives, the toilets in every home and the availability of sanitary pads. Of course, along with that, there are several other public welfare initiatives that the country has focused its attention on, be it free healthcare, and we are fast moving towards universal healthcare. I suspect there would be hardly anybody today who has to miss out on good health facilities like it used to be in the past. I don't know, you will recall maybe 20, 30 years ago, somebody coming home, your driver or your maid or your house help, asking for 20, 30,000 rupees to treat somebody in the family. When I went to the Kumbh last week, the local minister was telling me, when he became an MLA, one of his first challenges was how to sort out the problem of small shopkeepers or small hawkers, रेडी वाले, पटरी पे जो काम करते हैं, who used to take 10-15,000 rupee loan from a money lender, pay back 50 rupees a day as interest on 10,000 rupees. So effectively giving back 3,000 rupees as interest every month, and over a period of time, never able to repay that. If at all, the amount would only keep going up. Similarly, for healthcare, if somebody had a person ill at home and had to borrow money, for the rest of his life, he was just repaying that little bit of money because everybody wanted good healthcare for their family. So these small interventions, we brought in the Swanidhi scheme, in which we give 10,000 rupees to the hawker, ask him to engage and expand his business, the wares that he has. It's given at, I think, 8% or 9% per annum. They are only required to promote digital transactions, then the interest rate is also less. And once they have repaid that 10,000, they get 20 or 30, then 50. After that, they can go into a mudra loan up to 20 lakh rupees. And how many small people, almost 65 lakh beneficiaries, who have taken the benefit of the scheme, are today freed from the problems of the money lender. Roti, kapda, makan, स्वास्थ्य, शिक्षा, बिजली, सड़क, पानी. These used to be our daily problems for a large part of the country. And how can we look at inclusive growth unless we remove this basic tension, this basic problem from the lives of every citizen, every resident of India? And that is why in the last 11 years, we have worked on 3 tracks. A, setting the macro economy strong. I won't go into the details of what we inherited, the fragile 5 economy. It was embarrassing to go anywhere in the world literally with an Indian passport. You hardly got any respect when you went out there to do business as a tourist, even as a political leader. We set the macroeconomic fundamentals right. On the second track, we focused on public welfare so that every child born in the country can aspire for the good things of life, can aspire for a better quality of life. And the third track of investment and consumption-led growth. The investment-led growth with a multiplier impact, which Mr. Ranade, Dr. Ranade is better equipped to talk about, would be, and that two-third also adds to business, adds to trade, adds to demand for goods and services to the remotest corner of the country. Each one of the programs that this government has initiated have been driven by saturation. We want to make sure that everybody, without discrimination, gets the benefit of each of these programs. So when we talk of electricity for all, we don't ask anybody which state you are from, what language you speak, what your political leanings are, etc., etc. Everybody should get electricity. When we launched the Jal Jeevan Mission, so that water goes to every home from a tap, Nal Se Jal, and now nearly 160 million homes are already receiving Nal Se Jal. Our effort is that another 2 years or so, every home in the country will receive good water from a tap. And Dr. Shaw will agree with me that waterborne diseases was always found to be one of the biggest issues towards better health care. And if we can set that right, it can transform preventive health care in the country. Taking water to every home, taking digital connectivity to every home, making sure every home has a cooking gas connection so our ladies are not sitting before a coal or wooden chula and taking in 400 cigarettes worth of smoke. Now all these measures are the drivers of India's future economic growth, and it is on the strength of that growth that India will continue to play an important role in this broken, fragmented world, that India will continue to be resilient in its economic strength, and it is this strength that the country has today, the collective strength of 140 crore Indians, that drives us towards looking for a better quality of life, a better cost structure, lower inflation, and a better life at lower costs, at more affordable costs, and towards ease of living. Of course, technology will be a big enabler, and I think we shouldn't fight technology, we have to adopt technology. Technology will help us retrain and reskill our workforce so that we start engaging that technology towards our ultimate goals. We'll have to be conscious of climate and the challenges that climate change is showing up. And therefore, sustainability is at the core of our development agenda, not from today, for I think not only generations or centuries, but since times immemorial. I mean, for us as a nation, I remember Vice President Al Gore taking out the inconvenient truth about 20 years ago. Some of you may recall the inconvenient truth that Vice President Gore had come up with. And Prime Minister Modi, who was Chief Minister of Gujarat at that time, had penned down his own thoughts. Convenient action. We all knew the inconvenient truth. Not now, but for centuries. But what is needed is action. And I think India will not be found wanting when it comes to the world's effort to act on the climate agenda, to act towards a sustainable future for the world. And all of these, whether it's the public welfare initiatives I talked about, whether it's the infrastructure development that I talked about, whether it's our engagement with technology, all of this really provide economic opportunities. all of them in a country which has size, scale, which is today embracing our challenges skillfully and at speed. Size, scale, speed and skill defines the India economic opportunity today. And I think going forward, each of these projects, each of these initiatives will start yielding significant results, results that will provide economic opportunity, results that will, in some sense, lead to economic resurgence of the nation. All of these actions bring more resilience to the India growth story. And despite living in an era of fragmentation, I think India will continue to power on as the world's favorite destination for investments, as the provider of talent and skills to the world, as a young country with a population less than 30 years of age, aspirational in its desires and dreams, bold in its outlook, living in a democracy where the rule of law prevails, a country which provides the demographic dividend, a country that provides demand of 1.4 billion Indians, a country that offers you safety of the rule of law, viewpoints coexisting, so many different faiths and religions, so many different outlooks and economic theories, all coexisting with diversity, but also with a collective Indianness, Bharatiyata, a collective oneness that defines India at its very best. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and all the best for the Asia Economic Dialogue.
The Honorable, hello. Thank you. I hope all of you can hear me. The Honorable Minister has been very gracious and has accepted to take a few questions. We have a time constraint also. So maybe I would first request our President, Dr. Mashelkar, to raise the first question with the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, can I hear you? Thank you very much. Most inspirational. You know, as one says, aspirations are our possibilities. Keeping them high is something very, very important. First question is about what everybody must be having on their mind in terms of what has happened with regard to India, US, trade and so. So, Piyush, I've been listening to your statements very, very carefully, and your NDTV Profit interview on the other day was very insightful and very revealing in terms of what your thinking is. So I've got a quote from that. You said, "I do not see any chance of concern." I'm talking about, of course, the first tranche of trade agreement that will be due in fall, India and US. So you say, "I do not see any cause of concern. This is a golden opportunity for business and will open floodgates of new opportunities." In fact, you have put some numbers also. My sense is that those who are panicking today will regret tomorrow. I think we are very safe with you as, Commerce and Industry Minister. So can you please tell us what your thoughts on this are?
Well, who had said it? Elementary, my dear Watson. I think it's very logical. I'll give you a small context so that you'll resonate better with what I'm going to say. I had become railway minister in 2017, and President Trump's administration had just come into office 6 or 8 months before that, and Ken Juster, Ambassador Ken Juster, had been appointed ambassador to India. So he called on me at my Rail Bhavan office. I was not handling commerce, by the way, at that time. And in the course of the conversation, I very casually mentioned to him, I said, Ambassador, it's so silly that the US and India are always having trade tensions. We could possibly have a free trade agreement which would be a win-win for both of us, because we don't compete with each other on anything. We are complementary economies. Wherever labor is going to be involved, at our $3,000, we will be competitive. Wherever very high-tech products are going to be involved with less labor component, at $80,000 per capita, maybe your people can manage those high-tech industries and products. Where cutting-edge technologies have to be researched, you have the financial strength. Your financial strength doesn't have too many avenues for investment. India offers you that avenue and the demand, which will give your businesses an opportunity, your economy growth. So we basically complement each other, and he agreed with me. But the problem always was that the US Congress would never allow the United States to enter into any new free trade agreement. Now the rules of the game have changed. Now I think President Trump is taking bold decisions. Now maybe we may not land up with a free trade agreement in the conventional sense of WTO. But what we can certainly do, and what we are going to attempt to do, is ensure that we have fair trade between both countries. Areas which are of where we complement each other are taken up for greater participation. And I'd like to ask all of you, if there's a product or a good or a service that we need to support by all the time giving import tariffs, high import tariffs, by giving subsidies or by clutches, do you really think it's sustainable in the long run? After all, you can give a subsidy, you can give support to kickstart a process, like we gave the PLI scheme. Idea is to kickstart that investment cycle, encourage the business person to take a little risk and move forward. But no country and no good economy can survive permanently either on protection or on subsidies. And ultimately, bear in mind, there are two sides of the coin. There's a large consumer base also. 140 crore consumers also have to be looked after. How long are we going to keep protecting a few businesses at the cost of 140 crore consumers? For that matter, I'm not meaning anything against any particular industry, so actually I should avoid any comment or example. Particularly in Pune, what I was going to say could be badly misunderstood. So I'll refrain from that. But we've got to be willing to take competition. We've got to be willing to accept challenges that will make Indian economy, Indian industry, Indian business more efficient. And it's quite possible that a few may not be able to address these challenges. But then that's what the economy is all about. And ultimately it is the Indian consumer and 140 crore Indians who will benefit, because there will be greater job opportunities, greater business opportunities, greater opportunities to satisfy the needs of 140 crore Indians, greater opportunity of work for our teeming youth. And therefore I think it's a very natural partnership between two big democracies, two countries who believe in the rule of law, transparent economies. Largely the import tariffs are brought in for protection of against non-market economies or economies which are like us, emerging markets, and where the competition can hurt Indian industry, or to protect our farmers who deserve that protection, particularly because they are doing their farming in very unequal situation. Our Indian farmer with 2-3 acres landholding cannot be expected to compete with a farmer with 1,000 acres, or a dairy holder with 5 livestock cannot compete with somebody who has 1,000 big animals. So it's wherever there's an unfair competition is where the government steps in to provide protection. But otherwise, I think it's time India engages with the world with self-confidence. We want to see a powerful India, but that power will come from our competitive edge and not from government protection.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much.
If you permit, Mr. Minister, can I ask a question on China? Our trade deficit, India's trade deficit with China is about $100 billion US dollars, or a little over $100 billion US dollars. So my question number one is, what do we do about it? How do we tackle it? And the second thing which I would like to ask you related to this is that India has to become a product nation. We have to make in India. So is there any message that you would like to send through this conference to the Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which is one of the backbones of Indian industry?
Ambassador Gautam, China has two elements which we must all recognize. One, it's a non-market economy. One of the biggest mistakes the world did in the late 90s, that's around the time when China applied for WTO membership, mid-90s or late 90s. One of the biggest mistakes that the world did, including India, agreed to accept China as a market economy and as a member of the WTO. And I think we have called them out. Now President Trump is calling them out for their practices of trade and distorting prices and predatory prices. But be that as it may, that's one very important period which one has to recognize, that India got drawn into it. I think it was 93, 94 or so when they applied for membership, and sadly the world acceded to it, and by end of the century they were a member of WTO. Another element, and if you don't mind a little bit of politics, though it's a government sponsored and international event, I wonder what happened soon after 2004 that China became India's large trading partner. I don't know if you are all aware, and I would urge you to use ChatGPT or Google and see the exact number. I'm failing to remember it. But I think around 2004, the trade deficit with China was just about $2 billion. Arjit Ranade keeps track of all this. He may know better. But he's itching to ask me a question, so he can't accept that I get away without a controversy. But that was about $2 billion of trade deficit that we had with China. Then the ruling party at that point of time had some secret confabulations and meetings and some secret agreements which we have yet to see what those agreements were all about. And India drastically started reducing all the import tariffs on a MFN basis, which means for all countries equally, including for the non-market economy, which was China. And for your kind information, between 2004 and 2014, India's trade deficit grew at a compounded annual growth rate of 45%. From $2 billion to, I think, $40 billion or so by 2014, when we came into government. If you look at the growth of the deficit since then, it's only probably 2x or 2.5x. The growth rate since then is only about 6% odd. We've brought in a lot more in terms of MFN import duties, largely to protect against Chinese influx of substandard goods, predatory priced goods, and goods which have hurt and damaged the Indian economy. But what had happened in that period was that the Indian consumer had got used to a certain price point, irrespective of quality. And I've often said goods coming from such countries and of this quality, substandard quality, or at predatory pricing, is like opium. You know, you get hooked to it, you get addicted to it. And getting out of that addiction is a long process. What we are trying to do is de-addict from that low-cost, substandard goods that have flooded the market. So if you will observe, under our government, we have started being very strict on quality control and quality products. There were 106 quality control orders in 2014. By 24, we had 700 quality control orders. And I can promise you this is a continuous process. Only this morning I talked to the Consumer Affairs Secretary that what's happening, when is the next tranche coming out? And she said last week she has met with all the line ministries to speed up more quality control orders. My personal hope is I have 10,000 quality control orders in India. And India should accept that if we have to become a developed nation, quality is the one factor that will determine our success. If all of Punekars, if all of Mumbai-Pune industrial hub, and I'm just coming from Sambhajinagar, I think you can actually make it a Mumbai-Pune-Sambhajinagar full region. And what I saw at Auric, the Sambhajinagar industrial city, which has been developed by the state and center together under my ministry, was fantastic. Where Toyota Kirloskar is also going in, JSW is going in a big way. Land is sold out. I had a great engagement with industry there, which ran until 11:30 in the night yesterday. And I tell you, the excitement, the positivity that I saw was so satisfying that I've come from Sambhajinagar, both a proud Indian and a confident Indian, that we are in safe hands. All our people here are going to make sure India produces the highest quality of goods. India is able to meet any challenge from any country, and through free trade agreements to trading arrangements with the developed world, we will look at ensuring that we may not only protect Indian industry from any unfair competition, but also make it efficient to address the challenges that our consumers want. And I think consumers also today are becoming discerning. They also want good quality. And gone are the days, friends, when you had to go to a market and say, "Zara bhaiya export quality ka baal dikhana." Kiranji, hota tha ki nahi? You go to a cloth store and you say, "Just show me some goods which are of export quality." Why should we accept that? Every quality made in India should be the best. And our Indian consumers should get the best quality. And these QCOs, by the way, are not intended against any country or even against imports. The same rules apply for Indian industry. We have to meet those QCOs as much as any foreign country has to. And the idea is not at all to create a non-tariff barrier. You'll be amazed. 40 out of 100 QCOs have almost no imports. 40% of our QCOs, imports are either zero or $1, $2, $3, $5 million in a year. So don't think that this is only against goods which are imported. Every product, this should have its own QCO. So should this furniture piece, so that it's safe and doesn't hurt you. So should the sofa, so it doesn't fall and break my back. Everything, our mic systems, our lifts, we should have India's quality standards. Gone are the days where we'll adopt. We can look at other standards. We must try and harmonize also, so that our products are good for the world. But we don't have to, in a tender, bid out saying that CE standard or whatever European trade standards or European control standards or American standards. We will quote Indian standards, buy Indian standard goods. Ideally, we must harmonize. 90% of our standards are harmonized with most of the developed world. But bear in mind, if anybody tells you about international standards, there is no such thing as international standard. There is no international body. Europe has its own standards, America has its own, Canada has its own, Japan has its own, and India has its own standards.
Thank you. Frankly, we have run out of time. We had, of course,
Ranade Kumar.
but one of the characteristics is to take questions from the floor. And since the minister has already pointed to Dr. Ajit Ranade, if we could get a microphone to Dr. Ajit Ranade, please.
Thank you, Minister Goyal. Thank you for your gung-ho speech as usual. And this is the sixth edition of the Asian Economic Dialogue. Even though it's sponsored by the Ministry of External Affairs, and we are grateful to them, it's very good that because it's all about trade, investment, and therefore it's very appropriate that the trade and industries minister is here. So thank you very much for the. But since I cannot resist asking this question, everything is hunky-dory, no doubt. But this is.
We are on the way there.
Yes, we are on the way. In fact, as they say, perfection is a journey, not a destination. We should never be satisfied where we are. Thank you. So the question is very specific, since you are the industries minister, and you mentioned investment. One worrying trend, and we should be concerned about it, is that for the last few years, net FDI, foreign direct investment into India, net, not gross minus outgoing is net. This year is zero. And we should, the inward investment is nothing but the flip side of deficit. The most indebted trade deficit country in the world is America, and Mr. Trump is constantly talking